Okay, hi. So in this video, we're going to talk about a topic which is unfortunately very real, but often misunderstood as well, and that is the topic of drugs. Drugs. Okay, so we should be familiar with these symbols here. So over here we have a marijuana leaf. Over here, this is a symbol which of course represents heroin. You've got the needles there, and down here we have a lovely cup of coffee. Now, all three of these substances contain drugs, and that might be slightly surprising, but marijuana is the drug contained in this leaf, heroin is of course a very dangerous drug, and coffee contains the drug which is known as caffeine. Caffeine. Now, caffeine is definitely a drug. What separates it from the other two is the fact that it is legal. We can buy it from a coffee shop. However, caffeine has very real effects on our nervous system and the nervous system of other animals if they take it. And that really is the definition of a drug. So a drug is a chemical which alters the way the body works. And the body, obviously your brain is part of the body as well, so whether it alters your state of mind or whether it alters physically what your body is doing, so for example caffeine will get you really excited and your muscles will start moving faster, something like marijuana will slow your muscles down and relax you, but they're both also affecting your brain. So a drug is something that affects your mind, your body, or both. Okay, so obviously we can separate these drugs. The top row are illegal drugs, whereas the bottom one is of course legal. However, what about something like alcohol? Now, alcohol is one of the biggest money-making drugs on the planet. In the UK, it's completely legal if you are 18 years old or above, and so people often drink it. It's seen as a very sociable thing. Whereas if you go to a Muslim-based country, for example, the Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia is one example, alcohol is actually illegal, so they're not allowed to drink alcohol at all. So in some places, a legal drug is not to say that it is going to be legal everywhere, and so some people will have different views on different drugs. Of course, you can go to Amsterdam as well, and now you can go to Colorado because it's going to be wider and wider spread. And this guy at the top is legal. Marijuana is legal. You can go and have marijuana in a controlled environment known as in a coffee shop. Okay, now the one important thing that drugs can definitely lead to is addiction. So drugs can lead to addiction. Addiction. Sorry about this handwriting. Addiction. Now, addiction is a very serious condition because drugs will have physical and chemical effects on your body, which you then become reliant on. And some drugs are a lot more addictive than others. Heroin is one of the most addictive drugs there is. Heroin and cocaine are very addictive. Very addictive. And this means that if you take them, your body very quickly starts to rely on them. And then if you choose you want to give up, or you choose you don't want to take them anymore, your body will start going into withdrawal. Withdrawal. Now, it's important that this does not only happen with cocaine and heroin. Any substance you're addicted to, if you actually are addicted, when you come off them, your body will go into withdrawal. And this can lead to things like headaches. There we go, headaches. You'll get the shakes. You'll start shaking. You start sweating uncontrollably. And you start to panic. Loads of different things happen to your body, and so it's not a very nice situation to be in. And for this reason, it's very hard for someone who is addicted to give up, because they will have to go through these withdrawal symptoms, and they will have to just push through them if they want to free themselves of that addiction. Often that is very difficult because these headaches and pains and nausea, you can throw up, and it can be actually really, really difficult to cope with. Now, one huge problem with drugs, of course, is that not only will they chemically become addictive, the feeling of taking heroin, taking cocaine, smoking marijuana, taking any drug, even drinking alcohol, the feeling of just doing that, a lot of the time people really enjoy it. It can cause you not to think about your problems, it can cause you to feel a lot happier if you're not feeling great, and therefore people actually become addicted to that feeling, not only the chemical itself. And so, even though there are these withdrawal symptoms if they give up, they don't even want to give up. So it can end up being a very, very difficult world to get out of. Now, especially recently, due to the Colorado making it legal, cannabis has become very hot in the news. Now, cannabis is thought of as being a pretty soft drug in comparison to things like heroin and cocaine. However, there is evidence that there is a chemical in cannabis which can exacerbate mental illness. So if someone is prone to mental illness, it can speed up that process and make things worse. So mental illness, there is evidence for this. People will argue against that because there's no one single cause to mental illness. Often it's a very complex process, and so you'll always hear arguments against that as well. Okay, now one thing which is extremely striking is that almost all hard drugs, or hard drug users have smoked cannabis. And so initially you think, wow, that's really striking. Cannabis obviously leads to really hard drugs. The problem there is that often it's not that simple. Just because everyone who is on hard drugs has probably smoked cannabis, it doesn't mean that everyone who smokes cannabis will go on to do hard drugs. And therefore the relationship between the two might be a bit more complex. It could be, for example, that once someone can smoke cannabis, it puts them in touch with illegal drug dealers, and that allows them to try harder drugs. Whereas if someone had never smoked cannabis or anything, they're unlikely to know the right people to obtain the hard drugs from. And so it could just be that cannabis opens the door, but it's not the drug itself, it's the people who sell the cannabis who open the door. And so it's a much more complicated process than just having a look at stats and saying, well, cannabis leads to hard drugs. Okay, and lastly, of course, this is almost common sense, but a lot of people who get onto hard drugs, they can't really afford them. So especially hard drugs, they are expensive. And so therefore, in order to pay for them, a lot of people do turn to crime because they can't afford them any other way. Their jobs don't allow them to pay £20, £30 every time they want to take the drugs, but they do take the drugs very often. So crime is often involved, and also illnesses. So a lot of the time, taking these drugs is not done in a safe environment. Whereas alcohol, because it's legal, we have places where you can go and drink them. Things like heroin, we don't have places where you can go and do them safely. And so they will be using needles. So needles, which might be dirty. And by dirty, that means that someone else may have used them, they may be contaminated, and they could also have on them disease. So blood-borne diseases are a very, very serious issue. And so one example of that is, of course, HIV, which leads to the disease AIDS. That's an incurable disease and it will lead to death. And so, of course, that is a very, very serious issue. Okay, so I'll stop there. I think we've glossed over enough, but just wanted to give you an idea of exactly what a drug is. You need to realise that some drugs are legal and we don't even realise they're drugs, and also the problems associated with them. So if you do have any questions, please do comment in the box below or send me a direct email via the link, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.